Number 13. The contradictions found throughout the teachings of Muhammad are written off by Islamic apologists as abrogations, meaning that later revelations supersede the revelations of prior ones. Within Mormonism, the same game is played as it is accepted that a living prophet trumps a dead one. And the earlier revelations of someone like Joseph Smith, which contradict later ones, are seen only as stepping stones in the prophet's spiritual growth. The author Richard Bushman, who wrote Rough Stone Rolling, he says in his book, or he's LDS, he says that Joseph Smith, when he was looking through stones to find hidden treasure, that God was using this activity, which he was arrested for and convicted, that God was using this activity to teach him to be a seer and revelator for the church. Amazing. Number 14, the Quran actually teaches and testifies the coming of Muhammad. And Muhammad actually rewrote parts of the Bible so that it too testified of his coming ministry. The Book of Mormon actually teaches and testifies of the coming of Joseph Smith. And Joseph Smith actually rewrote parts of the Bible so that it too testified of his coming and ministry. Number 15, where the Quran acts as a theological framework to Islam, the Sunnah actually shapes at least 80% of the Muslims' life and faith. So too with the Book of Mormon and Doctrine and Covenants. The Book of Mormon might be seen as the core to the spiritual faith, but the Doctrine and Covenants actually defines most of what is done within the administration of Mormonism's life and religion. Number 16, Muslims accuse the Jews and Christians of tampering with the Bible, especially in order to remove prophecies that spoke about Muhammad, and therefore consider the Bible to be corrupt. This led to Islam altering doctrine relative to the uniqueness of Jesus, his teachings, his person, and his atoning work. Mormonism accused the early translators of the Bible, particularly the Catholics, of tampering with the plain and precious truths contained in it, and therefore consider the Bible to be unreliable. This led Mormonism to ultimately alter doctrines relative to the uniqueness of Jesus, his teachings, his person, and his atoning work. Number 17, in Islam, all non-Islams are enemies to Allah, and their response, especially to Christians and Jews, is one of violence. Where physical violence is not the norm in Mormonism today, non-LDS outsiders in Brigham Young's day were treated with similar contempt, including violence. Number 18. In a similar vein, Islam believes that all people on earth are born Muslims. And when they find or discover the eternal truths about Islam, they do not convert to Islam, but instead revert to what has always been, but they have forgotten to know. Muslims believe that those who have not reverted to Islam stand in a state of rebellion to Allah. When someone does revert, there's great joy within the ranks of the person, and they're welcomed home. Similarly, Latter-day Saints embrace the idea that all of the human race is in fact in possession of a premortal existence where we knew the truths. And that when a person converts to Mormonism, they rediscover, they find, or they have the veil lifted from their heart, and their minds embrace the Father's plan that was presented in this pre-existence. Number 19, Joseph Smith, and thus Mormonism today, taught that the LDS gospel has been known and practiced from the beginning of recorded history, and that all prophets from the past were tacitly Mormon. My daughters recently told me of an LDS man here in Salt Lake City who told a group of kids that Jesus was a Mormon. Naturally, Islam teaches that all of the Old Testament prophets were Islamic, and that they all preached Islam. Jesus is included in this group too. Number 20. Islam has a long and abiding desire to both convert the world and then to rule over it. The Surah 7:158 tells them that all people need to be brought back to Islam by every means necessary. Islam divides the world into two categories: the land of Islam and the land of war. So too Mormonism, from its foundations, has longed to convert the world and then to rule over it. Previous Heart of the Matter programs have provided ample examples of this ambition. At the same time, Mormonism has long broken the world down into two polarized groups as well: members and non-members. People who live in Zion, Utah, and people who live in what they call the mission field, anywhere else but Utah, which is the equivalent of the Islamic land of war. Number 21, Islamic law declares that insulting the Prophet Muhammad is equal to insulting Allah, since they are respected as representing each other fully. In some Islamic countries like Pakistan and Saudi Arabia, disrespecting or refuting Muhammad is worthy of immediate public execution. When Brigham Young settled Utah, the people who followed him here found themselves under a similar religious fervency. To question or deny the faith, Brigham Young or the prophet Joseph Smith could lead to death, but always led to people being wholly rejected by family, friends, and the community at large. Today, and though not nearly as extreme, the fact remains that to disrespect either Joseph Smith Jr. or the living prophet is certain grounds for being a social outcast, even to the point of having your high school English teacher give you a C for speaking your opinion in a paper about the differences in religion. It is my simple opinion that if and when Mormonism gets to the same numbers as Islam, 1 billion strong, and if it can maintain its economic status in the world, it will return to the extremist ways of Brigham Young and flex its muscle against anyone who challenge, question, or oppose it. Finally, there are four main ingredients or working philosophies that keep Islam alive and growing. I would suggest these four ingredients are also present in the LDS faith today. They are: first, the doctrine of taqiyya; second, the doctrine of abrogation; third, the doctrine of biblical corruption; and fourth, the doctrine of obedience. Let me briefly touch on these really quickly before we go to the phones. First, the doctrine of taqiyya is better understood as the doctrine of cover-up in Islam. Taqiyya literally means in Arabic, disguise. It sanctions lying in order to advance the cause of Islam or to preserve its good name. Taqiyya is very effective in Islamic apologetics because rarely will a non-insider get the straight story from an insider. Islam expert Solomon admits that he used taqiyya frequently when he was a Muslim and involved in debating Christians, all in an order to protect the faith. Similarly, Mormons have long been accused of a practice called lying for the Lord. The tactic is to use white lies and subtle deceptions so as to protect the faith from scrutiny. If you want an ample living example of that today, sit down a couple of LDS missionaries and ask them some questions, and you will see lying for the Lord in action. Second, the doctrine of abrogation, as we mentioned before, was the doctrine of convenience. When Muhammad stated one doctrine and then later on pronounced a contrary doctrine, the doctrine of abrogation stepped in and justified the inconsistency by saying that Allah is in charge and he can change his mind willy-nilly if he wants. This is accepted by adherents of Islam worldwide. Mormonism justifies its changing doctrines and inconsistencies with the convenience of modern revelation. To them, there's nothing inconsistent when the LDS prophet says one thing and 10 years later another LDS prophet says another. In the end, it's all what Muslims call abrogation. The third one, the doctrine of biblical corruption, is exactly as it sounds, and both Islam and Mormonism propagate it as true. And finally, Islam and Mormonism both embrace a doctrine of strict legalistic obedience to other men to one extent or another. So there they are, the similarities between Islam and Mormonism. Both were religions started by men claiming to be visited by angels. Both have additional scripture which contradict the biblical good news. Both claim these scriptures came from heavenly plates or tablets. Both claim a belief in a different Jesus. Both demand total allegiance in their faith. Both are highly legalistic, extending to even diet, dress, and finances. Both have a past and present history of extremism. Both claim the Bible has been corrupted. Both claim their additional book clarifies the Bible. Both have founders who have added their own names into the Bible narrative through retranslation. Both practice some form form of the doctrine of taqiyya, which in simple terms means lying for the cause. Both practice the doctrine of abrogation, which means it's permissible for one latter revelation to contradict an earlier one. Both treat defectors of the faith harshly. Both say that it's an insult to God to insult the founder, and that's equal. Both state that their founder's contributions are essential to the salvation of man. Both desire to convert the world. Both desire to govern the world. Both use biblical terms which has an entirely different meaning from the Christian worldview. Both represent an all-encompassing faith which invades every aspect of a person's life, and both are non-biblical, non-Christian, deceptive religious world powers, which in the end are the product of men. Hey, let's open up the phone.